Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Carlin? Here. Evans?
Here.
Garner? Herzog?
Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
Heschel?
Present.
Szilagyi?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I invite you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is around the corner. Dr. Cartwright.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We will move on. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is board and administrative reports, starting with the board president report. First of all, I was asked to invite all board members to try to speak directly into your microphone. Some of us have noticed that when masks are being worn, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to understand people, especially if the microphone isn't being used. So thank you for that. Since our last board meeting, I've attended 2 meetings on behalf of this board. The first one being the Oshkosh Public Museum meeting, which was held last week, Thursday. A couple of exciting things going on there. They are in the midst of designing a new exhibit, which is called Sporting and Recreation, which will focus on sporting and recreation activities past and present in the city of Oshkosh. That is due to open, I believe, sometime in 2021. And just a reminder that the Titanic exhibition, which was going to open in 2020, will also be scheduled now for 2021, and that will focus on Wisconsin connections with the Titanic. The other meeting I attended on your behalf was last night. That was the CISA 6 Board of Control meeting, and at your places tonight, I've given you samples of what CISA 6 calls Plan on a Page. This is their strategic plan, and you have a copy of the 2019-2020 strategic plan. They just updated that for 2020-2021. You'll notice that they have goals, they have measures of success, and strategies to get there. And then all of the employees or employee groups who fit under one of those core focus areas have goals themselves within their division and personal goals to align with the overall CISA 6 mission. It's kind of an interesting way, I think, to present a strategic plan and to put it in operation so that it truly does become a living document. And I just want to say once again, I appreciate all the input that has come from the variety of sources within the community, parents, community members, staff members, on topics of interest, particularly the reopening of school, which we all would like to see done in a safe manner for everyone concerned. So with that, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Herzog and board, if it's okay with you, doing good news report slightly different, okay. In that I've asked key staff members to come up and present certain portions of this. So I'm going to invite those staff members to go ahead and come on up so that you're able to speak towards that when it's at that time. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Our special education staff members taught and assisted students and helped make the extended school year program a success this summer, while following the district's established safety protocols amid COVID-19. We're so grateful for their efforts and compassion and appreciate the hard work of our students and families. A variety of Oshkosh area school district summer athletic camps have been taking place this summer, and we appreciate the ongoing support of our students, families, and staff members in following the district's established COVID-19 safety protocols. For example, the Oshkosh West dance team was able to begin practices in cohorts of 10 athletes, and now are all working together. And the cross-country team had 5 successful contact days, And again, just a reminder that every one of these activities were pre-approved through the Winnebago County Health Department prior to anything occurring. Oshkosh Area School District students from all 5 middle school band programs are collaborating while remaining socially distant to build skills and make music together this week. Run by our middle school band directors, band camp is a fun way to get back into playing shape for school. Plus, it gives the students a chance to play alongside students from other schools. And at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to share a few important reminders and information with our families and community. Moving forward, updates on COVID-19 as well as the November 3rd referendum will be included outside of our Good News Report in an effort to keep all stakeholders informed. Additionally, this evening we'll share an update on our EAcademy and clarify the AB schedule within our hybrid learning instructional model. So with this, I'm going to turn this on over to Ms. Conrad.
Right, thank you. Looking at our EAcademy, as of yesterday, and we have some more updated numbers, we asked families to enroll by August 10th and our elementary families to confirm. Currently, we're at just about 700 K through 5 elementary students participating in EAcademy. And just a reminder that EAcademy is a 100% virtual option outside of our different models that are in our face-to-face classrooms. Remember that we have our instructional models moving from in-person with safety protocols in place, along with the hybrid model, and then going model 4, which is virtual. This is outside of that. We have updated middle school numbers because confirmation was supposed to be in by 3 p.m. today, so we're looking more at the 250 mark. In our high school, we have just around 210 after confirmations came in. So what we're currently doing right now is we are making sure that we have staff and course sections ready to go for our EAcademy students. For families that are enrolled, you can expect to receive additional information via email coming up as far as what your class schedule or who your teacher is going to be, along with Chromebook and materials pickup the week of August 24th. We'll have that out, if not before. Our EAcademy teachers will be starting their training and preparing for the virtual classroom starting the week of August 17th, which is actually this coming Monday. In the hybrid learning model, which currently we have for our middle school and our high school, there's been several questions on the AB schedule. So for example, families have been asking, is the AP schedule divided up by alphabet? So am I A through M, am I A and B, etc.? That is not how we are dividing it up. So all schools in the OASD will follow the same AB day pattern, and we will publish this calendar right on our website so you can see which day is an A day or B day. And we can pick up with that AB pattern at any time when we're within a Model 3 or hybrid model. Students in the same household will be in the same AB day group. So as we start to take a look and do this, we have to lock in everybody's teachers and their course schedules. And then from there, the first thing that the algorithm, the wizard does behind the scene is look at all the households and line them up A, B, then it looks at the school, then it looks at the course sections in order to divide it in half, because the goal is to reduce a class or school size by 50%. AB assignments, remember we have to lock in schedules and we have to lock in teachers, so that's getting done this coming week. We are shooting for August 25th, no later than August 25th, which is 1 week from school start, that we will have your AB group designated.
Good evening. Everybody able to hear me okay?
Mr. Kamer, go ahead and get a little bit closer, please.
All right, oh, there we go. So as we've been navigating through everything COVID, we're always looking to base our decisions on the most up-to-date research and information that we can find. So in addition to that, we're always consulting with the Winnebago County Health Department as well as medical professionals both at the local and at the state level.
And I wanted to also to emphasize, because I think there may have been a misunderstanding last week, and I wanted to provide clarification to that, to the board as well as to our general public. when we were designing the plan, when we were looking at a lot of the variables and those type of things, this was occurring, yes, it was not only the individual, the people or organizations that Mr. Kamer just mentioned, but I also personally participate on a weekly call. So on this, actually, it can range anywhere from 1 call to 3 calls. Typically, there's 2 of them that will occur every other week, but then there's one that's pretty regular on a weekly basis, where on those calls, we have the leaders of some of our organizations. So, for example, Aurora will have one of their main leaders that participates in the call. Mercy Hospital, same kind of thing. On one of the calls, it's actually is all the Fox Valley superintendents where we participate in a call. And in that, we're able to obtain information from all the county or city health departments that are around us regionally as well. With that particular call, we have Theta Care has put a team together, as well as presentations for us that's specific to the Fox Valley area. And so they are sharing information with us. We ask a lot of questions. And in turn, as the teams were, they were developing a lot of these plans, obviously I was involved as well, and not in their committee meetings, but oftentimes in saying, okay, we know this is going to work because of this information, we've already asked this question, received information. So I just wanted to put a clarification out there, because there may have been a misunderstanding that we did not consult with medical professionals, but yes, indeed, we most certainly did. So I, again, just wanted to make sure that all of you had that clarification. Another announcement that you need to be aware of is we are anticipating this week at some point in time, the Department of Health Services putting in some very specific data criteria for school districts and health departments to utilize in a collaborative approach when making a decision as to what type of model the school district should be employing at that point in time based on the criteria that they are developing. All of you tonight in your packet, and this is available on Winnebago County Health Department's website, so it's a public document, is one of the resources that we currently utilize as a school district. And what it does is it breaks down the Winnebago County numbers and regionalize it for each of the different school districts. We receive this on a weekly basis. It typically comes out on Thursdays. And what it does is it gives you a big picture, where we are, but it also then on the second page, what you'll notice is that it breaks it down by age group. And this is, so it is that table that we really take a close look at in order to help us make some determinations as we go forward. But again, this is not the only resource. There's multiple resources, but this is one valuable resource, and we're looking forward to the state providing us with some additional resources in order to guide school districts and county health departments across the entire state.
I have a question about that quick.
Go ahead, Dr.
Thank you.
Mrs. Olmsted.
You couldn't
Sorry.
see me, so I was like, I'm just going to talk.
Thank you.
That was a question. One of my concerns was what measurements are we using to move between the models? Where are we getting that information from? Is there any set numbers? Is there any percentages, any of that kind of stuff? I know we're using, I know a lot of districts are using the burden and the trajectory for, which is the top page, and then the second page where your trajectory, where your percentages are going. The trend, all 3 of these pages hit that. Is that what we're using? And you're saying that Winnebago is going to give us some numbers of where the threshold should be? Because right now we don't have any we're going to use model 1 if our numbers are here. And once we hit to this percentage or this number or whatever, then we're going to move to model 2. We don't have any of those numbers. Is that what you're waiting for? Is that how I'm understanding that? That
It's not
Winnebago is giving you more information for that on what numbers, how we're going to follow that?
So it's not necessarily the exact numbers, but they're giving us criteria. So to answer that question, I don't know until I actually see it.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
what they're giving you?
They have not provided us with enough information for me to be able to answer that question for you just yet.
Okay.
But what's important for people to understand is that we have a very strong and close partnership with the Winnebago County Health Department. They are the experts on a lot of this. And, you know, because candidly speaking, we went to school to become educators.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that some of us haven't been trained in that, because as you know, in my background, that is something that I've been trained in, is related to infectious disease kind of stuff and how they handle that. But more importantly, again, is really having ongoing conversations with the county health department. It's going to look differently, you know, potentially dependent upon the case, you know, what's going on. Because, for example, if we have something that's happening within one isolated place, it could be a classroom, it could be a school, you know, it may be the whole district, as we're going through the different models. And that's where we are appreciative that the board provided that flexibility for us to be able to go through those models dependent upon the situation at hand.
Right.
And again, it's so much of it is so dependent upon, you know, spread. What type of contact was it? And those are where we consult, and I'll be frank with you, Mr. Kamer consults a lot with the health department in order to make those things. The other thing, health department, you may recall that they said that they also rely on like the absenteeism rate and comparing that over time. So it's a similar approach that we take for other infectious diseases. And so again, I'm eager to look for that document from the Department of the State Health Services Department. And then from there, I know that Winnebago County and ourselves, the school district representatives, will be having some additional conversations.
Right.
But
I just think it's,
yeah,
for the board, for the staff, for the community, for parents, I think having some kind of, we know that as we go up, this will happen, as we go down, this will happen, as we, you know, just so that you feel like you have some kind of knowing as a parent, like, oh, we're close to this number, or we're close to this trajectory or this burden, and we know this might change it, instead of there's not any knowing. So I'm also excited to hear what the state brings back. Okay.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Kamer, I know you had additional information.
Yeah, so this report has been the most helpful in really giving us an idea of what the current status is in our area. And it's nice when you can look at it on a week-to-week basis to really see what the trends are. As Ms. Olmstead mentioned, if you go to the DHS website, and there's a link to it right from this document, you can actually see what the trajectory is. And that trajectory, along with the burden status, is used to rate the activity level of COVID-19 in the community or in the county. And right now, a majority of the counties are at the high level. So that's the same with burden status, where half of us are at the high level. But the difficult part is, if you've been monitoring it over the weeks, it can change abruptly. So hopefully the criteria that we received provides that further guidance, so we can make the best decisions possible, and that, you know, it's relatively stable in that regard. One other thing that the Department of Health Services is working on are criteria that we can use as a district to determine when we're going to send people home in terms of the symptoms they may be showing, and then how long they need to stay out. That's a little bit more well-defined for somebody who may have tested positive, but right now there's some ambiguity around somebody who may be demonstrating symptoms but isn't going to get tested. We really need more guidance in terms of when we can allow those individuals back into our school building. So that'll be coming out relatively soon too.
Is that coming from the state or Winnebago?
From what I understand, it's the Department of Health Services at the state level.
Okay.
That's gonna be pushing that up.
Okay. Okay.
And with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Gunlock to come up.
Good evening. We wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I know each board meeting we're going to be doing a referendum update. There's not much that is new other than a couple of things. We've started to present to the various community groups, and that's gone very, very well. We also have started putting a great deal of information on our website, which the address is up there. You can see that. There's also a fact sheet on that site. If you really would like to know everything about the referendum in a short order, that fact sheet is what I would grab. It's a couple of pages. It gives you the entire story in one shot and helps give you information on where to go for more if you have questions. So obviously, if anybody's watching this via TV, we welcome any questions. They can contact the district. There's a phone number on there. If you leave a message, we'll get back to you right away. And there's also an email address on there, so you can send those questions in, and we'll answer them as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, so I know a lot of people are wondering, what am I doing these days, as you might say? And it continues just a lot of meetings, virtual meetings, and just ensuring that we're keeping as current as possible, because as we know, there's a lot of information that steadily gets changed as we learn more. So it's, again, just ensuring that we continue to be in the know and make sure that we're headed in the right direction. So without further ado, at that point in time, we do have some staff reports. If it's I'm not sure if you wanted to have a verbal on those or not, so I will leave that back to Dr. Herzog.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. I think it's always important to have at least an executive summary on some of these items, because sometimes we have administrative supplemental reports for which we did not hold a staff report or workshop. And so if we could just have a executive summary on C, A, and B, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Nehans?
It's a good way for us and the community to have a clearer, concise picture of what's going on, so thank you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. What we are doing is we've started the process of going paperless within the payroll department. So our time clocks, right now, they're all on paper form, and everyone submits those, and then it's a very arduous process trying to go through all of these adjustments that we have to go through. So we're transitioning to a Skyward platform of TrueTime. So everything is going to be automated. We're in the process of building it right now. We will be getting fully trained in the beginning of September. Our next large payroll is September 4th as the professional staff come back. So we wanted to do the training after that payroll, so we had a little bit more time staff-wise to devote to the training. And the plan is to spread this out over an entire fiscal year. So it's going to take a while to get everyone incorporated, but we are going to go through this process, and we're expecting to save at least a day of man hours being able to not have to go through these time cards anymore. So we're going to get at least that kind of a savings out of it, not to mention the other efficiencies that we'll see along the way.
And for clarification, it's a day per payroll cycle.
Correct. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Neenhans.
Mr. Kamer? Written report.
So every year the district reviews and updates its alternative education plan for the entire district. So that's 4K all the way through 12th grade. So as a part of that, we make sure that all the guidelines related to our plan are current within state statutes. And we also update our support matrix, which lists all of the programs that we have available for students in our district. So in my report, I always point out the new programs that are in place or that have been expanded from previous years. So just to touch on those programs quickly, one of them is Mentor 2.0, and that's a virtual mentor program that is primarily in our Project Phoenix program, which is an alternative education program at North High School. And each year, 50 students participate in Mentor 2.0, where they have a community member who meets with them on a weekly basis virtually and then once a month they would meet in person for some sort of activity or event. So we're going to have to limit, of course, the face-to-face interaction for the time being, but it is nice being able to have that virtual outlet for our students. Another program also related to mentoring is our Great Future Start Here mentoring program, and we are running that in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club for students in grades 10 through 12. So really that's focused around a graduation and career focus. There's actually a coordinator that helps our students stay on track for graduation. They look at grades, attendance, and credit accumulation. So that's another great program that's new this year. Another program that some of you in the district may be familiar with is called our New Start program. And that's a GED 2 program for students who reach the age of 17 and are significantly credit deficient. And it uses the GED test to help them catch up and graduate on time. So even though they're passing GED tests and they're essentially getting their GED, they're still getting a diploma from the district. They're graduating as Oshkosh Area School District students. So in the past, that program has been housed at North High School. And over the past few years, we've reached capacity in that program relatively soon into the year. And it's led to a situation where we've had waiting lists for that program. So by shuffling some FTE around in the district, we were able to expand that to West High School as well. So we're going to have a program in the morning at North High School and a program in the afternoon at West High School. So that's going to give students more options to be able to attend that program as well. So we're excited about that piece.
Thank you, Mr. Kemmer. Very good. All right, our next agenda item then is the non-agenda related public forum. We have a total of 8 people who have signed up to do that. Let me just read the expectations so everyone's clear. We ask that you clearly state the number you were provided, your name, address, and the topic you wish to address or speak on. If you are acting as a spokesperson for a particular group of individuals, please indicate the group that you represent. State clearly and concisely the matters of concern, and please limit your comments to the time allotted. We have been using, consistently throughout the last 2 or 3 years, 3 minutes per person, and I'll try to remember to give you a high sign at the 30-second mark when you are nearing the end of your time frame. Please remember that the use of specific names of district personnel could lead to legal liability. In such instances, please pursue the district's formal complaint process by contacting the superintendent's office at 424-0160 to direct you to the appropriate administrator. We have 2 lecterns, as you see, set up. The one to your right, my left, is the odd numbers, and the one to your left, my right, is the even numbers. So we will start with, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names, that's not intentional. Sarah Danahy is number 1, and number 2 in the on-deck circle will be April Davis. Sarah.
Thank you. Number 1, Sarah Danahy. Address is 1330 Maricopa Drive, Oshkosh. Today I am speaking just as a parent, but also as a mental health provider here in Oshkosh and Winnebago County, as well as Executive Director of Community for Hope, which is a suicide prevention agency here in Oshkosh. Because of my experience, I'm well aware of the impact of isolation and the potential challenges of virtual learning, and that's what I'm here to speak about. Initially, I came to ask you to consider a slower reopening, and I'm even more sure of that after listening to the first part of this meeting today. Hearing that the district is still awaiting some guidelines from the State Department of Health Services, and still unaware of how to manage all of the different factors that come into exposure and spread, makes me even more uncomfortable to send my 3 children back to school. One of them in elementary school, 5 days a week, full-time. There's not enough time for me to explain and express all of my concerns with going back to school full-time. But this meeting so far has been very eye-opening. We are less than 3 weeks away from starting school. And all I've heard tonight is that we don't know what we're doing yet. We have a plan, but there are no specifics. I'm extremely concerned about sending my 7-year-old back into a classroom. And I don't know what to tell him about anything. And it's not the school's fault. It's really no one's fault, but I'm extremely uncomfortable. My 7-year-old yesterday was in tears, and sometimes that happens more frequently than we'd like to admit, but he was in tears and I kept saying, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Mom, I don't know how much 6 feet is. How do I know how much 6 feet is when I go back to school and I have to stay 6 feet away, or I don't have an answer for him. I don't know how to tell him, that this is what they're going to do. You're going to practice." Our teachers, staff, and families deserve the investment of time and thoughtfulness as we embark on this. And with 3 weeks left and very, very little information coming to parents, I really, really ask that you consider a slower reopening, whether that's half days, every other day, or a combination of both. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next is April Davis.
Hello, my name is April Davis. I live at 1836 Georgia Street in Oshkosh, and I am a 2nd grade teacher in the district. Tonight, I will be speaking, I will be the first person speaking for a group of teachers that will be talking about an email which was sent to the board and administration on behalf of the OASD teachers. We'll be diving deeper into the issues that were concerning the K-5 students starting 5 days face-to-face. We are requesting to amend the process of the proposed 5-day face-to-face instructional model for the Oshkosh Area School District elementary students. While we do not debate the benefits and the necessity of this instructional model, we feel that a 2-week minimum at the Model 3 as a soft start to the beginning of the school year is imperative to allow protocols, procedures to be modeled, taught, practiced before the full population of students come back together in an elementary school building. This will not only increase the safety for all involved, but will also set elementary schools up for the best chance at a longevity and stability for a 5-day face-to-face model in the near future. Many of the safety procedures and protocols outlined in the handbook for the upcoming school year are not feasible with a full class size within a typical classroom. Though we will never be able to accurately and fully adhere to all those protocols with a full class size, we are more likely to succeed in implementing them with more time to model and practice safe expectations at the beginning of the year with a half amount of the students in a room. For example, if asking to keep students 6 feet apart, as she was saying, when lining up, if this is taught and practiced, it would be much more effective with a group of 12 students versus 25. When 25 students are asked to wash their hands both when going out to recess and coming in from recess, it is much more realistic to teach and practice this process with 12 students, taking only 8 minutes of instructional time per recess versus 25 students taking about 16 minutes of instructional time per recess. It is the CDC guidelines that each student washes their hands for 20 seconds each. If students are taught these proper hygiene habits and safety protocols, there will be less likely a chance for germs to spread, which will then increase the longevity and sustainability of us going back to school 5 days a week. I want you to take a look at this room right now. We're spacing people out 6 feet apart. Now, the amount of people that are behind me is about a classroom size with people. I'd like to think about what it would look like if we all went into a classroom. How feasible would it be for us to be able to do this? I'm going to turn it over to the rest of my group now, and we'll be continuing on the same points. Like I said, this is a group effort from the teachers.
Thank you, April. Number 3 is Melissa Polachek.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And I state my address, correct?
I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if I needed to state my address. So I'm a school counselor, elementary school counselor, and I'm continuing where April left off. And I want to share that typically emotions...
Melissa, you need to state your address.
Oh,
you need
I
to
do.
start that way.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
you
what
do.
I would
Thanks.
ask.
Okay. Yeah.
Melissa Polachek, 4194 Country Club Road.
Thank you.
And I'm an elementary school counselor, and I'm going to pick up where April left off. Typically, emotions are already heightened at the beginning of the school year, as students are required to acclimate to a brand new grade level, classroom, teacher, and set of rules and guidelines. Our students are undoubtedly scared, nervous, stressed, anxious, and unsure about this upcoming school year, even more so than a typical school year because of the current situation. Students will now need to learn completely new norms that they are not used to, all while facing a brand new school year after having been away from the school environment for nearly 6 consecutive months. Teaching and learning this new set of rigorous protocols and procedures in a full class setting may only harm or delay their adjustment right from the beginning. If we had half the amount of students, then teachers would be able to get a better understanding of students' social, emotional, and educational needs and build more positive personal relationships while easing students into what will now be their new norm. This is a monumental adjustment for young children. Also in the spring, technology became a barrier for many students. Smaller class sizes would make the introduction and distribution of devices for the K-2 easier for students, teachers, and parents. It would also allow for a smoother transition for all students to learn online programs that will be necessary for teachers to use while socially distancing in the classroom and or teaching virtually if needed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is number 4, Jennifer Reichel.
Yep, Jennifer Reichel. I am an instructional support teacher of literacy in the district, and my address is 3091 Rebecca Run. And I will also be continuing our points from the perspective of a teacher. Under the current plan, we will be starting the year with full classes, all in school together, without students having a solid understanding of the numerous safety measures. This will potentially increase the risk of students and staff contraction of COVID. There is a valid concern that this increased risk will lead to the increased need for substitute teachers, which currently we are experiencing a shortage of. The district handbook for the 2021 school year states that instructional support staff will be pulled to act as subs as needed. Our instructional support staff will be of utmost importance to support teachers as well as our students with academic, social, and emotional needs in this undesirable situation. Half of the amount of students in a classroom could decrease the risk of contraction by allowing for more physical social distancing along with the time to teach, model, and practice those safety protocols. It will also allow for more opportunities for instructional support staff to assess and determine student needs and in order to come up with feasible plans for instructional support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is, Lindy Mateka.
So I'm Lindy Mateka. I am a 5th grade teacher in the district, and I'm also continuing off of where Jen left off. We understand that this is a difficult decision to make and that there are many factors at play. Though we know that a 5-day face-to-face model is ideal and our ultimate goal, we strongly feel that implementing Model 3 as a soft start for elementary school is in the best interest of the students and sets us up for the most success in the future. By beginning with this model, our students will be better able to acclimate to a whole new set of procedures and protocols that they have never, ever experienced before, in a lower stress environment that allows them the necessary time to process and adjust. This, in turn, will also allow staff to provide the highest quality of education to our students, with more time being provided for us to focus on building student relationships, and getting to know our students' social, emotional, and academic needs during a truly vital time.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Number 6 is Leah LeClaire, to be followed by number 7, Abby Pavilion.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Leah LeClaire, and I live at 1315 Judy Lee Court in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I teach 4th grade in the Oshkosh Area School District. I'm here to conclude the points that were began by the other teachers tonight. In conclusion, this is a request to amend the proposed 5-day face-to-face instructional model to include a 2-week minimum at Module 3, the AB schedule, as a soft start to create a learning environment that could significantly decrease risks in physical, mental, and emotional health for our students and staff. It will also increase the likelihood of sustainability in the 5-day face-to-face model throughout the school year and contribute to the utmost student success. The Oshkosh Area School District teachers request that you follow in neighboring districts' footsteps and reconsider your decision from last week. Please make a motion to revote on having all students, K through 12, start the school year in a hybrid Model 3 version. Thank you for your continued support in helping to make the 2020 through 2021 school year the very best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. Next then is Abby Pavilion, to be followed by Sarah Bauer.
Hi, I'm number 7. My name is Abby Pavilion. I live at 709 West Linwood Avenue in Oshkosh. I'm here also to address the back-to-school plan. Thanks for allowing me the chance to speak tonight. And also thank you all for the work you did. I watched all 3 hours and 14 minutes or something of the meeting last week, and I know that wasn't easy for all of you. I am an elementary education teacher. I've been teaching for 17 years in a different district. However, tonight, I'm wearing red in support of our teachers. I'm here as a parent. I was a little disappointed watching last week that there were no other parents that showed up to speak on the topic. But what I did see were 6 very dedicated teachers up here speaking from their heart. I cried several times, knowing the fear that they have is the same fear I have as a teacher and as a parent coming back to school. My ask of you is to consider Model 3 for the start of the school year as well. I don't feel like the teachers were heard very well, and like I said, my children have been in the school district for 9 years, and they've all been wonderful, gone above and beyond for my children, so I'm here to help support them. I've cried a lot over the last few weeks. I've had the email up several times on hit yes, no, virtual, no, in person. It's been a really hard decision for me to make. I have a 5th grader and a 7th grader who, according to the models that you chose last week, will be on 2 very separate schedules. I'll have a 7th grader going to school 3 days a week, 2 days the next week, and a 5th grader going full-time. For our family, that's very confusing, and it's a lot on our schedules. I really struggled with the virtual learning, having a 5th grader who has struggled with the curriculum over the last 6 years. Finally getting it, thanks to the wonderful teachers at Oakland. Now we'll have to go to a virtual model and learn a whole different curriculum. At home with my husband, who is not an educator, tries very hard, but that was a struggle for me to have to make that decision. I don't feel we know enough about all of this. I'm very grateful you work very closely with the health department to know the ramifications and the long-term effects on our children. I know that in-person is so very important. I agree with these teachers that I think a soft opening on 2 weeks, having that half of the kids in the classroom at one time so that you can build those more personal relationships with those children, and it's in a safer environment than having all of them. I didn't even think that it could take a half an hour of instruction just washing our hands, and as a 4K teacher, that terrifies me with all the kids in my class of how much instructional time will be lost on routines and procedures and all of that if we don't set the tone right at the beginning of the year. I should be at my own school board meeting tonight, voicing my concerns on things for our teachers, but I felt so strongly after last week that I needed to be here as a parent of Oshkosh students to share my concerns and my support for our teachers. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry, that was Abby. Next, we have Sarah Bauer.
Yes, I'm number 8. My name is Sarah Bauer. My address is 4011 Prairie Lane, Oshkosh, and I am speaking as a teacher parent. Good evening. My name is Sarah Bauer. I am a teacher, an elementary teacher. I'm also an OASD parent as well. I'm one voice, but my bravery tonight is inspired by my own family, my students and coworkers, past and present, and the public who are in support of more safety precautions for all students and staff, specifically at the elementary level. I do not agree with full-time in-person learning for elementary students. I believe Model 4 virtual is by far the safest choice, but I believe Model 3 hybrid would also be a safer choice since it would create smaller class sizes in order to distance. If the board and executive team believes in-person learning is what is needed, I'm urging you all tonight to consider switching to Model 4 for all levels or Model 3 hybrid for elementary when we start in 20 days. I came to last week's board meeting as well and heard the speaker from the health department say, there's no doubt that we'll see COVID. That stuck with me as a parent and teacher, and yet we are still sending our students to school buildings. In fact, the latest school district weekly data summary from the Winnebago County Health Department website was shared on August 6th and shows that the burden status is high for OASD because of the child positive case count from July 22nd to August 4th. Age group trended over time data on the website also shows that even our youngest age groups are testing positive right now within OASD boundaries. Last week, the health department speaker even shared that the risk is high for 25 or more people in a smaller enclosed space for 7 hours. The executive team also included that one of the rationales for a hybrid model at middle school and high school level is that these age groups typically will recover. The word I want to stress is typically. These are sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, future engineers, future mechanics, pilots. These are some of my students' dreams, by the way. What if they don't recover? 2 years ago, my son was diagnosed with an enlarged artery in his heart due to atypical Kawasaki disease, which has been brought to light more because of COVID, since it resembles pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome, which is thought to be linked to COVID. I've experienced firsthand what a respiratory illness could trigger in some children's bodies, which requires them to be hospitalized and could even lead to death. Needless to say, my son will not be attending 4K this school year, but you have already decided for my family how my daughter will return to school, and that is in person, because we do not have the ability to enroll her in EAcademy. We can only hope that she can stay safe and healthy like everyone else's loved ones. This last school year, I was a blog writer for our district for our math curriculum company. I was asked to write about virtual learning during this pandemic, and I will leave you with one of my closing thoughts in that piece. Classroom walls do not define you as teachers. Please reconsider how we can more safely educate our children with learning Model 4 or 3 come September 1st. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all our speakers this evening and those of last week, again, as well as those who have written to us, so I thank you for that. We did not have anyone who signed up for the agenda-related public forum, so we will move on to the first of our 2 workshop items. Workshop item number 1 is issuance and sale of $15,840,000 of taxable general obligation refunding bonds with Drew Nehans, Michelle Weberg, and Michelle Weberg of PMA. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will just share my screen here with a brief, host disabled participant screen share, and I will not share my screen. I don't know if you can enable that, Dr. Gunlock. There we go. Everyone can see that now?
No. Up here?
You should be looking at PMA, our logo, and a Oshkosh School District sales summary. Is everyone able to see that?
Mrs. Olmsted, can you see that?
Oh yeah, I'm okay.
Yes?
I think.
Did I
everyone
proceed?
can see that. I believe so.
Yeah, I think we're okay, Michelle.
Okay, great. I will be brief. I know you guys have a lot on your mind, but I do have some really good news. We took bids this morning on the refinancing that you discussed briefly at a board meeting back in June, and now we do have final results. Starting with the first page, it's titled Bid Results. And on here, you will see all the bids that were received from prospective underwriters this morning. The bid time was at 10 a.m. The time listed here is Eastern time, but the bid expiration time was 10 a.m. We used an electronic bidding platform called Muni Auction. And on that platform, bidders are able to keep improving their bid up until the bid expiration time. And we had really very active competitive bidding this morning. We had a total of 9 bidders submit 40 bids. And the auction was extended 5 different times because new bidders entered first place in the final few minutes. So it was really, for finance geeks like me, an extremely exciting bid this morning for the refinancing, with a winning bid coming in, a true interest cost from Piper Sandler at 1.25%. So when we look at the next page, just an overview of what this issue is, before you for approval tonight is $15,830,000 taxable general obligation refunding bond series 2020. We're refinancing a portion of 2 different bond issues from 2012, the June 15th, 2012 issue and the October 15th. This issue, the refinancing will close on September 2nd. You will make principal maturity payments on March 1st of 2021 through 32, with your first interest payment on March 1 of 2021. These bonds will be callable in 8 years, so the last few maturities will also be prepayable or eligible to be refinanced at a later date, although I can say that interest rates are at incredibly low levels, historically low levels, so I'd be surprised if you found yourself with that opportunity. Your Moody's rating was affirmed as a AA2. We had a credit rating call. Both Drew and I were on that call, as well as Kelly Handy. I think it went really well. Great comments from Moody's in terms of the fiscal management of the district. Obviously, they'll be watching to see the results of the referendum coming this November, but everything very stable with strong financial management. Again, the winning bidder, as we saw on the previous page, is Piper Sandler with a 1.25% interest rate. Your final savings for this refinancing, net of cost of issuance, is over $1.8 million. When this was discussed back in June, I think the savings estimate was about $1 million. The last time we looked at it in July was $1.2 million. So we have far exceeded expectations here, as interest rates have really continued to come down, and I think our timing was really, really good on locking in rates on this refinancing. The average annual savings from 2021 through 32 is $151,000 per year. So that savings is going to directly reduce what the district needs to levy for debt service. So it is an absolute savings directly to the taxpayer. The next page is really something maybe your eye doctor would put up to see if you're able to see any numbers on this page. There's a lot of detail here. I will blow it up a little bit, but all this is just the detail behind the refinancing. On the left-hand side, we have the 2 2012 bond issues that we are refinancing, all of a portion of the callable maturities that range in interest rates from 3 to 5%. And again, we're replacing that with the new debt with a true interest rate of a 1.25%. When we factor in all cost of issuance, the all-inclusive rate is a 1.34%. So we're refinancing old debt with new interest rates that are less than half of what the previous debt was at. So great results. Again, average annual savings of about $151,000 and total savings of $1.8 million. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have as you look to approve this resolution.
Does the board member have any questions or comments regarding this staff report? Mr. Evans.
So would it be possible to give us a real brief explanation of what this, how do they make money on buying our old debt and something to that effect?
I did not, I'm sorry.
See how they
Well, I mean, investors are interested in purchasing this new debt in this new interest rate environment, essentially. So those holders of the old debt, they were holding portions of those old bond issues that were callable or prepayable. So they were kind of compensated from the beginning when the bonds were issued with the idea that those bonds could get called away from them. So essentially, the previous bondholders have been compensated for the flexibility you have to prepay the bonds. The new bondholders are just interested in making this investment at this time, despite the fact that interest rates are at historically low levels.
Thank you.
Does any other board member have a question or comment regarding this staff report? Mr. Nehans, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
I just want to explain to the board that all the material other than the very fine print detailed analysis was included in the updated resolution materials that you received a little bit earlier before the meeting as we were updating the bond resolution to begin with. So that was included with your materials, knowing that some of this may be a little hard to see over a Zoom format. But I'd also like to thank Michelle for joining us tonight and taking the time to walk us through it.
Thank you,
My
Michelle.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you all.
And thank you, Drew. I appreciate the role of our business office in looking for ways to save this district money so that we can have an impact not only on instruction, but also on the overall budget for those of us who support the district with taxes. So thank you. Dr. Cartwright, did you want to add anything?
I think that you may have just made a point that I think we need to lay out specifically.
Okay.
Mr. Nehans, so if it's an annual cost savings of approximately $151,000 per year, where does that money go? Is that going back to the taxpayers? Is that?
A portion of it is in Fund 38, so roughly half of that money is coming out of Fund 38, so that's going to actually free up a little bit of our tax levy that we can do, that we can shift some of that portion of that money into Fund 10. The Fund 39 portion of this, which is, again, roughly half of that, just goes away because that's outside of our actual revenue limit. So we are going to free up roughly $74,000, $75,000 of revenue limit authority into our general fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, Drew, if I could just add something, a little nuance here. Drew is absolutely correct in that one of these debt issues is in Fund 38 and one is in Fund 39. However, the Fund 38 issue was issued for energy efficiency, or Act 32. So that debt is levied for outside of revenue limits like Fund 39. So actually every dollar we're talking about of savings is taxpayer savings, will reduce the tax levy going forward, again, in the years 2021 through 32 by about $151,000 per year.
Thank you, Michelle. I forgot that 38 was energy efficiency.
Very good. Are there any other board comments or questions? All right, again, thank you, Drew, and thank you, Michelle. We appreciate your efforts on this, and we'll move on to the next workshop item, which is equity with the executive team. This happens to be one of our strategic goals, and it's good to get an update on this topic.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You do need to actually take a vote on that resolution.
Michelle, this is presented as a workshop at this point in time.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's an action item later?
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's an individually
So
considered
sorry.
resolution.
Have
Nope.
a great evening, thank you.
We're good, thank you very much.
No problem. We will be voting on this later this evening. Thank you. Equity workshop with the executive team.
Good evening.
Right. Good evening. Just about 1 year ago, Dr. Brown and I presented on the start of our equity work district-wide in the Oshkosh Area School District. So it's my privilege tonight to present along with other members of the executive team on our systems approach and our progress towards that equity in the Oshkosh Area School District. Our goals for tonight with the board workshop include providing you an overview of what the integrated comprehensive systems of equity framework looks like and why we chose that model to guide our equity work, to identify how this learning connects to the work already started in the Oshkosh Area School District, including narrowing the opportunity gap, which, as Dr. Herzog mentioned, is aligned in one of our major goals in our strategic plan. To talk more about what our OASD Diversity Equity Committee looks like that was newly formed this summer, personnel hiring and retention strategies, as well as equity in resources, and we're going to focus tonight on transportation and facilities. So in other presentations that I have done for the board and other places within the district and the community, we use this graphic quite often because when we know better, we do better. And currently in the Oshkosh Area School District, as Mr. Kemmer had pointed out in his piece on PK through 12 supportive and alternative programming along with the matrix, we have some really awesome programming going on in our school district that is meant to help narrow the gap and narrow the academic achievement gap for students. What's been happening and what we want to accomplish within our equity work is taking all of those pieces and how are they really assisting in helping students? Is it building synergy? Is it really promoting equity and being equitable? So as we learn more and as we progress through the framework and do more with equity within our community, when we know better, once again, we do better. And so we are really trying to approach this from a systems lens here in the Oshkosh Area School District so that we can build synergy to narrow that opportunity gap for students within our school district and with our community.
And so you might recall that we started working with Dr. Elise Fertira and Dr. Colleen Capper a couple years ago with the Integrated Comprehensive System Series. Before that, we were doing things in equity, but we were doing the best we could because we didn't know that there was a comprehensive framework out there. And so we started out doing a lot of work on identity. And then when we saw both Dr. Capper and Dr. Fertira in person, we learned about the framework and all the other pieces that we needed to take a look at. And so, as Julie said, it really is a systems approach to eliminate inequalities for all of our students.
We know with the recent activities, with the recent protests, with the recent discussions that have been brought up in our community, we know our reality in America is that we have persistent inequity. We know that it is also within our schools. Our schools have a history, a long history of marginalization around each of these intersections of a child's identity, of an individual's identity. And so part of our equity journey and work is to really take a deeper dive into what does marginalization mean within our system, within our nation, within our community. So as we are working with our staff, as we are working in our community, there are ways that we, with the best of intentions, our schools can perpetuate poverty. And as you look at this graphic, there is, I think, as you know, I like hashtags and little mottos to help us focus in on different aspects of our work and our thinking. And so one of those is if we label them low, we teach them low. And with that, that perpetuates and leads into our our deficit-based thinking. And so what we have up here is what typically happens within school systems. And I'm generalizing here, but as we look at this framework, we can see parts of this happening within our community and other communities in Wisconsin. So we have a student from a low-income family. We tend to, with some of our biases, especially if we haven't done work on our identities, that we may take a deficit view of a student in a family. Like I said, sometimes when we label them low, we teach them low, and we set low expectations of students with sometimes the best of intentions because we want them to reach goals. We place the student remedial group or track in the program, and then sometimes those programs perpetuate failure. We blame society for the poverty for the student failure, and then we continue to lead into the student does not graduate, or they graduate with low skills or low-paying jobs. So I know that this is a gross generalization, but I think that we can see in our systems a lot of these things.
Okay, so when you take a look at the integrated comprehensive system framework, we wanted to make sure that you knew what it was not. It's not a framework to foster equity. It's not a process. What it is it's a framework to foster equity. It's a process. It is research and evidence-based. They have been doing this work for over 45 years. And the most important is that it's a journey. It's not something that we're going to be going through and checking off a list and saying, there, we've completed our equity work. This is something that's ongoing and lifelong for all of us. And so if you take a look, this is the framework and process for eliminating inequalities, and you'll see there's 4 cornerstones. We started in Cornerstone last year, and we're going to be continuing in Cornerstone this year. Cornerstone 1 will be completed by the spring of this year, and it includes some of the work that they started on last year was the history of marginalization and looking at our current model. And then we are going to be continuing looking at deficit to asset-based thinking, and equity begins with us, and that's really the identity work. And then the other work that we're going to be continuing to look at is our equity research, and Julie had worked last year with Harmony.
Social emotional learning, Stanford and Harmony?
Yeah. Okay. And then the equity non-negotiables, and that was something that was sent out to each of you so that you could take a look at what our district non-negotiables are. Staffs will be looking at that this year and giving feedback about where their school is with that. And then, of course, the equity audit to drive change. This past summer, you might have heard that we had our co-plan to co-serve training taking place. And that's setting us up so that when we complete Cornerstone 1, we can move into Cornerstone 2 and to educate all of our educators on what that piece will look like. And that's really looking at all of the structures that we need to have in place for an integrated comprehensive system. And then just very generally, as we finish that work, it is really transforming our teaching and learning and really helping support our students in a co-plan to co-serve model. And then finally, it's really looking at policy and funding. And when we get into policy, that will be all of you supporting that work as well.
So as we are approaching going through the steps within the cornerstones, going in the steps with the system, we are looking at data, and I believe what Kim was trying to get me to say was that we are currently working with Hanover Research to help us with our equity audit, and in a future board meeting, we would love to share with you the results and the next steps within that. But really what we are looking for is advancing learning for all students across identities. We know that that is one of the important areas that our board has asked us to focus on. And we are looking to advance that learning for all students across all of their identities. And we know that each child and each individual in our school system whether it's race, disability, language, social class, religion, gender, sexual or gender identity, and their intersections. We need to be paying attention to that as we are advancing learning for all children.
And part of that work, and we've spoken to you before about windows and mirrors and making sure that the resources in our classrooms have windows and mirrors. The mirror is the story that reflects our own culture, and it helps build our identity. And a window is a resource that offers you a view into someone else's experience. And so we think it is very critical to understand that students cannot truly learn about themselves unless they learn about others as well.
And that goes for our adults as well. And so one of the major things that Dr. Capper and Dr. Futura have worked with us on is that within Cornerstone 1, when we talk about identity and talk about asset and deficit-based thinking and language, is that each of us as individuals have work to do to understand our identities and how they intersect. And have we had opportunities to have windows and mirrors in our work, to have windows into others, into a child's culture, into a child's background, as well as making sure that our curriculum resources, texts that we are working with, that children have access to, provides them a place to see themselves, as well as have a look into the culture and the lives of others. And so this is really important and has been very much a focus of our curriculum purchases over the last few years. And so with that, as we continue our work in Cornerstone 1, and another piece is that Dr. Futura and Dr. Capper have counseled with us not to hurry up through working through Cornerstone 1 and that focus on asset-based and that identity development and really truly understanding our system that we're currently working in. And that by hurrying up and going through that cornerstone, and as Kim said, it's not checking boxes. What we're doing is we're continuing to build on a deficit-based system, where what we're really trying to do is change starts with each one of us as individuals, and really looking at our own biases and once again our identity. In order to do that, we're going to continue to build on a deficit-based system on those puzzle pieces that are scattered on the floor from the infographic, instead of building a cohesive system. The other piece about this is I appreciate Brene Brown. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with her, but here's one of her quotes. In order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. And I think that is one of the key things that within our community and within our nation right now, we need to really be listening and acknowledging how a person's experience is within a school, within their workplace, within their community, as a teacher, as a parent.
I'm sorry, Mr. Peschel.
Sure. There's an educational moment in what you're discussing right now, and it's the word bias. And if you could just break out that word, and more specifically maybe like an implicit bias, and kind of defining just taking a moment to define that. Because when the community hears us talking about bias, they see that as a face value word. They don't understand that there's particular biases that we're wanting to educate about and to particularly undo that we think will enhance our educational experiences and our growing experiences within our district. Can we take a moment to just discuss that?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Pinkston to talk a little bit about bias.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad-Peters. One of the things, Mr. Peschel, that you just spoke about that ties into the work that we are doing as a district is starting with ourselves and examining what our own biases are. And as we have worked through the different quadrants with first us as a central office staff, and then working with our building level administrators, and then expanding that to include the teams that we have in each of our schools. It's incumbent upon us again to check our biases to make sure that we are not looking at our students and working with our students through a negative lens and using that deficit language rather than using an asset-based language. So when we talk about bias, we're talking about bringing in our own personal baggage and our own perceptions and allowing that in some instances to color how we see our families and how we see our students. So again, it's incumbent upon us as instructional leaders to model that behavior. If we're going to teach our students how to examine their biases and their perceptions, we need to model that behavior, and that starts with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, that's a really good segue into saying how do we break this cycle, and what does the change in a system look like if we are talking about specifically how schools can disrupt poverty. So once again, we have our children in our community. Every single day, our parents and our families send us their most precious gift, which is their children, right? And so whatever background they come to us from, they come to us at school. And we engage with, support, and learn from that student, that family, and their community. And so our engagement and our work with them is key in building that understanding. We do identity development of self with us as adults, but also making sure, once again, it goes back to that child having windows and mirrors. We use an assets view of students and their families. We look at their strengths and build upon those. We set high expectations for all students, and all means all. And then this is the part I get excited about, Kim and I, in the curriculum of teaching and learning, is the identity responsive, rigorous learning. So how do we take the strengths that each child brings with their backgrounds and use that to build on within their learning? And with that, the student graduates workforce and post-secondary option ready. We say college, career, and community ready, with that opportunity to break the cycle. And that's what we're going for.
Ms. Conrad Peters earlier referenced what has been going on not only within our community, but also within our nation, socially and politically. And we had an opportunity to hear from our community about their concerns, and specifically as it relates to our students of color. So in response to feedback from and an ongoing dialogue with members of our community, we created a survey to send to our parents within our school district, and specifically parents of students of color, and invited them to work with us collaboratively on a committee which would focus on issues of diversity and equity for students of color in our district. Two of the concerns which came from members of our community and parents was the importance of diversifying and the diversity and equity within our staff. And as was mentioned earlier, the phrase mirrors and windows. It's important that our students of color see folks who look like them in leadership roles. That's very important. So with creating this committee, we reached out to them. We got 40 responses back, not just from parents within our community, but from community members who didn't necessarily even have students in our schools, but this topic resonated with them and they wanted to work collaboratively with us to address the concerns that members of our community have. So in forming the committee, we want to have representation from parents for all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And the primary goal of the committee is to provide parents an opportunity, a forum as it were, to work collaboratively with us, to share what their concerns are, to partner with us, and not only bring their concerns, but to bring their ideas and their passion to help us move our journey of equity further along within our district. Then personnel, of course, is the HR director. That's within my wheelhouse. As outlined in the district strategic plan, below are just a few measures that are included in our strategic plan. I had an opportunity prior to the full-blown onset of the pandemic to head south and visit historically black colleges and universities with the specific intent of hiring and recruiting quality candidates, first and foremost, who happen to be of color. And in going down south and attempting to partner with staff who work in the career fair offices, just making sure that Wisconsin and Oshkosh in particular are on the map so that students of color realize that they really have an opportunity to come to Wisconsin and to come to the Oshkosh area school district in particular and really make a difference, not just in having an opportunity to work with our students of color, but all of our students. I have also been having ongoing dialogue with the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh campus to recruit and cultivate students of color as mentors to work within our schools within the Oshkosh area school district.
For our equity for transportation, we've done a good job with Cabusson, and Cabusson does a pretty good job of partnering with us for the majority of what we need. But we have had to partner with some other organizations as well to, in a district this large, to be able to meet as many transportation needs as we have, especially when they start getting into a little bit more of the specialized transportations with some of the smaller vans and smaller cars. It's not necessarily a specialty of what Cabusson does. So a couple of the items were highlighted. One is the new partnership we have with the city to have free rides for all students throughout the entire city. So that's really going to assist us in this, especially in some of our areas where we don't have Cabusson going in as often. Being able to provide that free transportation is really going to hopefully assist a lot of the families we have. A couple of the ones on the bottom, the forging new partnerships are pretty new. We've got a couple partnerships that we're looking at. One to do our McKinney-Vento population, and another one to look at some a little bit more of the one-off situations where we have some families that just don't have the transportation means, and they need rides one way in certain instances where it'd be a student or two or maybe three, where we're getting partnerships. Sorry, I keep moving away from the mic. To get partnerships for these families and be able to provide access around the district for them as well.
Before you head to the next slide, I also just want to highlight on the first bullet, with our partnership with the city, we're also extremely grateful for the private donors who also contributed to this. So we just want to make sure that we're recognizing everyone that is involved with that, and we greatly appreciate it. And for those who are not familiar with what McKinney-Vento is, that is for your homeless population. And so what happens when a family becomes homeless, then there is a process that they go through, that they notify us, and then from there, whatever school they were last, typically whatever school they were last enrolled in, no matter where they're living, we provide the transportation for them to get back into that. Make sure I'm correct on that interpretation. But just for the general population who may not know what that act is. My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Neon.
I have a question. I asked people to sit at the microphone, and then I didn't do it myself. Sorry about that. I have a question on that first circle there, partnered with the city to provide all students free rides. I think we need to give credit to the city council for supporting that. I know there were a lot of meetings that took place, and I know Mr. Peschel played a key role in that. Could you give us any details on how that's going to work and when it's going to start for students, since our school year is almost upon us?
It starts right away. Right now, the routes from the city are not going to change at all. So the routing isn't going to change at this point, but we are going to be tracking the ridership as best we can. And then potentially, depending on if there's needs to potentially alter some routes, there may be some wiggle room on that further down the road. But at least initially with the city, we're going to keep the routing the same way. So in some instances, it's going to be a plus for us because the students are free now where they used to have to get a pass. But also acknowledging that this isn't going to be they're picking kids up in certain neighborhoods on the west of Highway 41 and having an easy access into one of our high schools. At this point, that's not going to be the case. They would still have to get a transfer in front of the Walmart to jump on the 6 bus to come down 9th Avenue, kind of a situation. Maybe there's potential for us to do something with the routing, but again, until we have viewership or ridership coming up into a point where it makes sense for the city, right now there's no plans for that at the current time.
And I believe that this applies to all students in the city. It doesn't matter if they're Oshkosh Area School District students or...
That is correct.
Correct.
It applies for any student who resides within the Oshkosh Area School District boundaries. So that would include your private schools, students as well. So this program will start on September the 1st. And then from there, for students, in order to access it, for our middle school and high school students, they just need to show their ID in order to do that. And then elementary school students, at this point in time, do not have to show an ID to access that. The city bus, they did make modifications to how they track ridership. And so they will be able to track through that information, if it's an elementary student or if it's a secondary student of ours. So we'll be able to look at what the numbers are related to that. In addition to that, we will be preparing a report for the school board at the conclusion of the school year with some good metrics in there. We'll be sharing that report as well with the city council, so that way they're aware of how we're tracking the data. And so these are some of the inner working components related to this particular project.
Thank you. And then I think Mrs. Olmsted wants to jump in here. I just have one more question. Does this include Saturdays as well as Monday through Friday?
I'm not positive on that. I've had 2 meetings on this, but very brief in my short time, and I ended up concentrating on some of the referendum work and that. So maybe Dr. Cartwright can help me out.
No problem. And I apologize, Mr. Nehans. I'm just trying to.
Nope.
He's doing an excellent job, by the way. He's really drinking from a fire hose on a lot of different topics. So this is no slight to him, so I want to say that, please. So the program is, when the buses are running, the transportation is available for our students right now.
I know many people see this as tying into the homework gap or the opportunity gap to allow students who might not otherwise have the means to go, for example, to the public library or the public museum or other places in the community where they can access resources to do their homework. So I'm just so pleased that we're able to do this as a community for our students. Mrs. Olmsted, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, Dr. Cartwright answered my question. I was going to ask specifically what day it started.
Anyone else on the transportation? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Carlin?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did have one question. I did have one question, but the presentation isn't over yet, correct? I'll save it. Okay.
One of the other areas that we looked at in terms of equity and resources was facilities. We do have some issues regarding our facilities, hence the referendum that's coming up in November. One of the main issues is in our smaller facilities, especially our smaller middle and elementary schools, there's often an inability to provide the same level of service. These are often our most diverse learners. And typically what happens is you end up bouncing staff a lot because you have to adjust staff, and usually that results in higher turnover. And that is just, having been a principal of a small school, that's an issue. Many of our oldest and least flexible facilities are in need of the greatest repair, and our most diverse students go to those facilities. The November referendum addresses a lot of these concerns. Key among those is the fact that flexible and modern facilities will be provided for our most diverse learners. Improve student access to educational services. That's really the main purpose behind all of this. There's some secondary purposes as well, but the whole point is providing the ability to provide the maximum number of staff to our students at the most cost-effective method. The other thing is infrastructure, safety, and security improvements. Those are all key to this as well. The one bright spot we have is technology. Every student in this district, K-12 at this point, has access to a device. And the one area we're trying to shore up, because it's relatively new for all communities, is ensuring internet access in the home. We provided 200 Kajit hotspot units in the spring, and that was sufficient for our need. We did not check all of them out. We got close. It was about the right number for us. But as we move into EAcademy and potential for virtual learning and hybrid learning, that need's going to be there, and we're going to need to continue to shore that up.
And at this point, that will conclude the part of the workshop for you. But please, again, understand that we are going to continue to bring information to the board. We did not want to have the board drinking from a fire hose today. So this will become a part of our regular presentation to the board, so that you are aware of some of the things that we are doing, because we're doing a lot more than what we presented for you tonight. But we wanted to make sure that we started the conversation with you in a very public way. Dr. Herzog, I believe Ms. Carlin has a question.
I'm sorry, I need to be more alert here. Thank you.
Actually, I would like to start by saying thank you for doing this work, and I think it's really great that we are taking these kinds of steps. And I was looking at your slide on how schools perpetuate poverty, and we were fortunate enough to be able to attend a workshop on poverty at one of our WASDA meetings, and they were talking about how we can't always change things quickly in our schools, but there are a lot of things we can do that are free. And one of the things I was thinking about is our students in need have a hard time sometimes getting to school because they lack transportation. And she was saying, what is the first thing that we do when they get to school is we give them a tardy note, and they're in trouble, even though it's taken them extra lengths to get there. So one of the takeaways from that workshop was we have to record our tardies and we have to notice it, but she was suggesting, we can change the experience. We can put a smiley face on that tardy slip that says, thank you for coming. We are glad that you are here. And just simple things like that can make them feel more welcome. So my question is, and you probably are already doing and thinking about things like this, do you have any examples that you could share with us on things that you might be doing in schools to address these kinds of needs?
Well, I think the whole asset language, when we talked about that piece, that is a piece we've been very focused on, and I think you can hear it in the language of our principals and teachers and clerical staff. And we have had trainings in the past too regarding how do we greet, and we all know that relationships are the most important thing. And so when we talk about relationships, it is about how do we greet. And there's a lot of elementary teachers here tonight. They'll tell you their morning meetings, it's all about starting the day where we really are caring about each other and knowing where people are at. Because we all start with that human element, right? Mm-hmm. Another piece that we're focused on in the Oshkosh Area School District is the conscious discipline training. And that is all about relationships and understanding where the child is coming from. And so that's another piece that's going to be started this year, although some schools have already started some of that work, and you can see that and hear that when you're in those classrooms.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work on this.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I am very excited about this work as a former teacher, and recognizing that over time I probably had students from all of these various marginalized groups, and wish that I knew more and did more. In my own family, my grandmother was an immigrant. She came to this country at age 4, and there were family stories about others of her background in terms of, and some Oshkosh people will relate to this, the Germans from Russia or the Volga Germans and how they were treated when they first came here. So I learned that as a young child, that our heritage was different, although we were not people of color. But having had students who speak different languages, students who had various disabilities, different religions, gender identity, they are in our schools today. They've been in our schools for a long time, and as many of us espouse the value of respect for all people, this to me fits right in that same arena. And as was stated at the beginning of the meeting, it's important that we pay attention to those things. And they also tie into what Mrs. Piron reminded me of last meeting, and that is the Oshkosh Civility Project, that we practice these 9 beliefs in terms of everyone we meet in our community, because we need everybody. And it's important for all of us as a community to celebrate the diversity and to help people feel welcome in our community. So I'm very excited about this work and moving the district forward. I think it ties in really well with our strategic plan and the overall goal of helping to make Oshkosh a better place for all of us to live, learn, work, and play. So I want to thank Dr. Cartwright and all our presenters tonight. As I said, I'm personally very excited about this and look forward to ongoing updates, and especially the formation of that committee, so that we can hear from parents and people who do represent maybe viewpoints that are different from our own. I didn't mean to cut anyone off. I probably just did, but is there anyone else who wanted to share? All right. Well, thank you. We'll look forward to an ongoing update on this topic.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Is there any board member who would like to pull one of these 3 resolutions? I will plan to pull resolution 1B. So the board will consider approval of 1, personnel, A, appointments, temporary appointments, resignations, and salaries. 2, employee handbook updates. 3, independent hearing officers for expulsions for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Evans?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Heschel?
Aye.
Szilagyi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 1B, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the retirements as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Who's second, please?
Stephanie Carlin, second.
Thank you.
Once again, we have an opportunity to thank a number of people who have served this district with a lot of effort and energy and concern and care for our students and their families over a period of time. And these people tonight include Susan Brusky, who is retiring as a supervisory teacher assistant from Oshkosh West High School. She's been with the district for 25 years. Stephen Groth is a building custodian 2 from Emmeline Cook Elementary School and has served the district for 22 years. Deborah Conan, art teacher, Franklin Elementary School, is retiring after 22 years of service in our district. Mary Poklasny, supervisory teacher assistant at Oshkosh West High School, is retiring after 17 years of service. Wendy Payne Joswiak, school counselor, Roosevelt Elementary School counselor, is retiring after 19 years of service in our district. Kathleen Rothy, CLC director, which is a district-wide position, and she has served the district in various capacities, even though she's retiring as a CLC director, but I first met her, I think, when she was a secretary at Oakwood Elementary, and she's been with the district for 20 years. And finally, Victoria Wolosik, a cross-categorical teacher assistant who's retiring from Carl Traeger Elementary School and has served our district for 15 years. I would just like to thank all of these people for their years of service to the students and families of our district and wish them well in retirement, whatever path that takes them, but hope that it will be a long, happy, and healthy one for them. Any other comments on these retirees? Please call the roll.
Herzog?
Yes, aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Szilagyi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next, we have an individually considered resolution. Authorizing the issuance and sale of $15,840,000 in taxable general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020, and rescinding the resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $16 million in general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020, adopted June 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Olmsted.
I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to ask if we can waive the reading of this resolution, because it's 4 pages.
Second.
So, if we could do that for Dr. Herzog and ourselves.
Second.
We've all read through it, so.
There's been a motion and a second. I appreciate that for the sake of all of you having to have me
I was just close
I
to
know.
making
I was like, should I do it? Should I just make
read
it
through the fine print here.
Second, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we would vote on the waiving of the resolution, please.
Do roll call. Yep.
Mr. Peschel? Did you have something to say?
No, I was
I'm sorry.
agreeing with you.
Okay. Please call the roll on the motion, please.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Szilagyi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we need to vote on the resolution. And I just read the summary of that resolution. I think Dr. Cartwright has something for me here.
I do apologize. We do need to, for legal reasons, we do need to at least just read the first part right here.
Yep.
They're all caps.
Okay. I can do that. Thank you. We want to be legal. Okay, the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $15,830,000 in taxable general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020, and rescinding the resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $16 million general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020, adopted June 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Peschel?
Aye.
Szilagyi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next agenda item, request for future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items? Mrs. Carlin?
I do. It has been a week since we voted on our opening plan, and as we've seen other schools open up across the country with mixed success, I would like to make a future agenda that we have not emergency, but a meeting next
Special.
week. Sorry?
Special meeting.
A special meeting next week to review our opening policies, just because we have seen our neighboring districts make a lot of changes and call some last-minute meetings as well. So I would like to see us do that next week, if at all possible.
All right.
So how do we legally do this? Because I also want to have a future agenda item similar to Mrs. Carlin's. So do I say that to her, or do we have to go on just hers right now?
We don't have to vote on
Because we're not voting on
that.
anything, yeah, okay. Well, then I'd like to add.
Dr. Cartwright?
I apologize, I just want to make clarification. Are you, Ms. Carlin, asking to look at the policies, in other words, the whole plan, or are you looking to what the recommendation is specifically to what model we are in when we open school? Because there are two very different things.
I think we should reconsider some of our models, particularly with the elementary schools. That is what I would like to consider doing.
So you're talking about how we would open school on September 1st, not
Correct.
the
Correct.
plan itself. Okay.
Correct, yes.
I apologize for that clarification.
Oh, no,
I just
okay.
needed clarification. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to second Mrs. Carlin if she's finished. Yeah. I also would like to have a special board meeting to discuss the metrics that you're getting from the state, to see what those look like that you and Mr. Kramer were discussing, and looking at discussing what OEA came in for a soft opening. And then hopefully with that too, if we, when is up to the board. We do have things coming in. In the Northwestern, there's an article that I looked up when I got here that we might have a visitor in town on Monday, which would really bring a lot of people in town. President Trump might be coming to town on Monday, which would bring an enormous amount of people probably into Oshkosh. So that might make our numbers, move. So obviously this is a change every day with what's going on in Oshkosh. Mm-hmm. I would like the meeting, and this is to say, before we even start school, Dr. Cartwright and the executive team and our staff could change this without us even having a meeting, but I'd like to at least have a meeting in place, because as the numbers come and as we get things from the health department, I do trust Dr. Cartwright and the exec team that they might change the opening anyway, but I do want to be able to have a discussion, a special board meeting to look at that for not the plan, just for how we plan on opening school, particularly at the elementary level also.
Was that your intention, Mrs. Carlin?
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
So we need to set a date then for next week for a special board meeting?
Well, I'd like to hear what everybody thinks, like when we should have that special board meeting. Do we wait a whole other week? Do we wait,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Szilagyi.
I will be out of town next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening.
When?
Next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening, I would not be available to attend that meeting. I greatly apologize for that because I support what each of you are saying, but I just...
Okay.
Would you be available for a Monday night meeting? And what about the rest
I'm
of you?
pretty sure I would, but I feel like I should double check everything.
And I don't know if the rest of you are open, but it doesn't have to be an evening.
Well, no, it could be late afternoon perhaps,
Right, yeah.
because we do have
So-
some board members who have day jobs.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm available Monday
Monday evening.
Dr. Cartwright, will that fit in your schedule?
Yes, ma'am. I'm at the will of the board.
All right, so what day and time works for the board next week?
I believe the discussion is the 17th, if I'm understanding correctly, which is a Monday.
Monday the 17th?
Sure.
Is there a preferred time? As I know some of you have day jobs, so
Yeah, the evening
that may
is
impact
preferred for
the time.
After 4:30.
After
Yeah.
4:30?
And Jim, after 5:30?
After
Should we just do
4:30 is
6, normal time?
fine. 6 seems to work out.
Perfect, okay.
Okay.
6 is great.
So 6 o'clock on Monday night, we would have a special board meeting for the express purpose of talking about the opening of the school year on September 1st, metrics to move among and between the models, and also discuss possibility of a soft opening. So we would be properly noticed. Mrs. Salaji?
I just want to bring up that we have a board member that's missing. I don't know if we need to, make sure that it works with her schedule before we set something. Just trying to be mindful of that.
Mrs. Garner was not able to attend this evening, but we'll see if we'll make her aware of this, and hopefully she'll be able to attend next Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. It would be great to have a full board here.
I also want just to advise the board that we may not be able to have that televised like we normally do.
Okay, but we would probably meet in a location such as this.
We will, yes, it would be here.
Okay, so Tipler next Monday night at 6 p.m. All right, are there any other requests for agenda items? Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I was going to ask for, and this all could be changed on, but I was going to ask for a real basic presentation on what the back-to-school plan looks like. I've seen a lot of, either I don't understand it, or there's a lot of people out in the public that don't understand what it is, because I'm seeing a lot of people posting things that are thinking, where did this come from? What we did today with your superintendent's report, when you kind of broke down some of the things, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And depending on what happens on Monday, this could be a moot point, but I'd like to perhaps, based on what happens, have a real basic presentation on what
And I agree with you, Jim. I would like to see a presentation that says, when somebody gets it, is the school going to close for 2 weeks, and what our process is going to be, and things like that.
We may not be able to provide it to that level of detail, Ms. Carlin, and the rationale behind that, again, is it is so dependent upon the situation at hand, because...
And I definitely understand that. I mean, it literally changes by the day, so I understand that.
I appreciate your understanding of that.
We hear a lot of phrases or catchphrases, but the notion that we are in a situation that changes very rapidly. If there's any constant right now, it seems to be change. And my sister sent me a news article from Central Illinois where the school superintendent down there made a comment regarding students in school. Some of us don't have our own children in school, but according to the superintendent of that Central Illinois school district, every taxpayer has children in school. Every member of this community has children in school. This is a community-wide issue. We need to work together. That's the catchphrase. We're in this together. And so we need to make sure that people fully understand the plan. I know there's been a lot of communication that's gone out, but you can never have enough good communication. So we'll address those two issues on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. Excuse me, 6 o'clock in this facility. Sorry. Are there any other questions or comments tonight? Any other announcements, I should say? Any other announcements? Mr. Paschal.
Sure. I have two. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the condolences that this board had provided me when my mother abruptly passed away a month ago. So not just the board, but members of the administration and several staff members of the district had sent me emails, had provided me phone calls. Just overall was very wonderful to see that amount of connection from the school district. So first I want to thank you all for that. The plant is growing and it's beautiful. So that came from the board. So that's my first announcement. My second announcement, I want to take a moment to briefly discuss my conflict of interest that's kind of been at the forefront of discussions. And I want to acknowledge that it's my conflict of interest. Though parts of what took place in last Wednesday's meeting weren't necessarily done correctly, but those have been amended and taken care of, and there's no ill will there. But I think it's important to acknowledge that I am choosing to accept the conflict of interest, mainly in a couple areas. Is that one, most importantly, it relates to my family, first and foremost. And so it's my decision to make that conflict, to declare that and accept it. Secondly, there's also, there is a board policy that kind of regulates conflict of interest as it relates to us as board members. And most people wouldn't know that if they were watching this on TV and out in the community. And that board policy basically indicates that the member who has the conflict, whether it's legal or perceived, is expected to not take part in discussion on that item and to not take a vote on that item. So, and I hope that brings a little bit of clarity as to what took place, even though it wasn't a perfect situation. It is what it is, and I accept that. What I do want to say is that please don't take that as me not caring about students and about teachers and about staff and administration and fellow board members. I do intend to be still active in the process of guiding and shaping how we move forward in these times and beyond this time of COVID. And I just want you guys to know that I acknowledge that, and that I want the community to also understand that I acknowledge that this is a work in progress. I don't think it was perfect, but I also want to acknowledge that I'm a member of the Policy and Governance Committee, and there's always opportunities for us as a board and as committees to talk about how these policies affect us. And there's guidance out there that allow us to kind of shape what those policies are. Now, I'm not advocating for a change of policy. I'm advocating for us to continually be looking at our policy and figuring out what works best for our board and what works best for our district. So, and that's the one thing that I think that, Dr. Herzog and I have talked about through this discussion, is that it always provides an educational opportunity for us to have these discussions. And so, and to find ways to have them appropriately taken care of. And so, so with that, I want to acknowledge tonight that I have another conflict of interest that's on the agenda, and it relates to the executive session that we'll be talking about negotiating potential elements with the employee groups of the district, and I will not be taking part in that meeting tonight because of that conflict. So thank you for the time.
Mr. Peschel, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments this evening and every night that you're here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, A, Oshkosh Education Association, or OEA, negotiation strategies. B, Oshkosh Paraprofessional Employee Association, or OPEA, negotiation strategies. And C, Non-Teaching Employee Association, or NTEA, negotiation strategies.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Peschel.
Abstain.
Adjourned. Meeting has been adjourned.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.